Good morning, everybody. It's Jeff Goldberg for the Sales Pro Network. If you're joining us for the first time, I'm a sales coach and trainer, and I work with both individuals and organizations internationally to help them do one thing and one thing only: increase their sales. And I founded the Sales Pro Network to elevate the profession of sales and to give salespeople a place to hang out, network with each other, learn, and earn. And if you've joined us before, you know that every Friday at 10 a.m., I either do a live training or a live interview with somebody who can add value to the profession of sales. And today is no exception, my friends. Today's guest helps high performers reach their next level of growth. He is the founder of Reach Your Ultimate Potential. Please welcome Ben Eden. Good morning, Ben.
Good morning. Thanks for having me, Jeff.
It's a pleasure. And I'm not sure if I mentioned it's May 9th, so today's May 9th. Ben, before I get started on the 1,000,001 questions I have for you, because I think this is a particularly important time to hear from somebody like you, given the state of the economy and politics, and things are kind of chaotic. So I think now more than ever, salespeople need to be in the right mindset. But could you maybe give us the 2-minute version of your background? What led you up to this moment?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So I consider myself a high achiever and always have been my entire life. The person who got the good grades, who was the natural leader, the person who was the high achiever, getting even VIPs in different areas, right? So I'm used to just doing well at whatever I do. And I went through my journey of becoming an HR executive. I did the journey of becoming an intern and doing the degrees, the bachelor's and the master's. And even in my 20s, I became an HR executive over an international company. So that was a great experience. And a part of my story that maybe we'll get into later is, even though I was the executive, I wasn't fully happy nor fulfilled. And so I started to look for my next step. And in February of 2020, good timing, I know, that's when I ended up leaving my HR executive role to do what I do now as a professional speaker and as a leadership coach or business coach, helping others go through a journey that I did, which is very important to understanding how we see ourselves. Because even as I saw myself as the successful HR executive in my 20s, there was a lot behind the scenes that didn't add to the happiness that people might have thought that I had. So it's my privilege now to help people all over the world with these kinds of things based on my HR and business and high achiever background.
Fascinating. A lot of how we function day to day, and whether we're happy or not, has to do with our self-perception, how we view ourselves, right? So how does our self-perception make or break our success and happiness?
Oh, this is a great question, Jeff, and I'm glad we get to start with this one. I'll start by sharing a story to help us understand all of this, okay? And this will be a little interactive, so I'll ask a question, and yes, I want you to answer it, okay?
Fair enough.
So we think in school, okay? Society teaches us to chase results, literally. So when we're in school, we're supposed to get certain grades. In fact, what grades are we supposed to get? You shout it out.
A's.
A's, right? And if you get A's, what does that mean about you?
You're good.
You're good. You're smart. You're an A student is what they call you, right? They don't say you get good grades. They say, no, you are an A student. But what happens if you get an F?
You're bad.
What does that mean about you?
You're a failure.
Exactly. Now, that's what people say, and that's what we think is you are a failure. But does an F grade mean you're a failure? No. An F grade is a failing grade. Big difference here. Huge difference if you truly understand it, right? Because as we just experienced, your natural reaction was to say, yeah, it means you're a failure. Of course. I mean, everybody knows that. Yeah, because most people have experienced that. But that's not the truth. So we learn that in life, we experience things even if they aren't fully the truth. So how does this apply to your question? How does self-perception affect us? How does it make or break our success and happiness in life? Well, the same thing applies for the rest of our lives. Okay, we were trained if you got good grades, and that could have been a B+. Maybe that was a good grade for you, right? For whoever. And that means you're a good person. That means you're smart. That means you're good enough. And I'm doing some quotation marks if you can't see me, right? And then we think that. And so we say, great, that's good enough, and I can feel good about myself. But if I have anything less than that, automatically that means I'm a failure. I'm not good enough. So then it doesn't matter the results that you're getting. You always think you're not good enough. Mm-hmm. And how this applies to work and specifically sales, right? Let's say you have a quota. Let's say you're supposed to sell and make $200,000 a year. Now we get to play the comparison game a little bit. If you have a goal of $200,000 a year and you've made that goal for the last 3 or 4 years pretty consistently, you're proud of yourself because, hey, I'm getting A's. And people say, you're successful, you're a great salesperson, everything else. So people are saying what you want to hear, and all of a sudden your self-perception is being lifted up, thinking, yes, this is great, I can do this, I am good enough. But what happens when the year comes when you make $150,000 a year, even though your goal was $200,000 and you've gotten that for the last 4 years? This
You're a loser now.
Yeah. And you see how we're talking about it. The energy already shifted. We didn't meet the goal. You didn't get the A. You're all of a sudden a failure. You're no good as a salesperson. That's what we think the world is telling us, and that's what we experience inside. But let's pause for a second. You're still making 150 grand, for crying out loud. $150,000 in sales. And that could be in a downturned economy. It could be in the struggles of politics. It could be, hey, you had some health issues and everything else. And you're still making $150,000. But this is true. This is critical that we understand exactly what we're talking about. The self-perception. Somebody else could see you from the outside and be like, dude, you're still fine, man. You have nothing to worry about. You're making $150,000. I'm over here. I don't even have a job, right? There's some comparison. But ultimately, it comes down to self-perception. Because other people can see you a certain way, but if you're achieving certain things and yet feel like a failure, that affects your true sense of success and happiness.
And isn't a lot of it based on the things we've learned and heard and said as we were kids? I'm so glad you made the distinction between you're a failure and you got a failing grade. Because
Yes.
I have 3 kids. I think you have 5, which blows me away. My kids are a little older now. They're 24 and the twins are 22. But I made a conscious decision and a strong effort, and I'm pretty sure I managed to do this perfectly for their entire lives, to never, ever say, you're bad, you're stupid. I have said, you're behaving badly. What you just did was not smart, but I never said you're bad, you're stupid, because I didn't want them growing up thinking, oh, I'm bad or I'm stupid. And my belief, and you're the expert on this, is what we hear, and it helps to, especially when we're young, it helps to formulate our self-belief, no?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, if you've watched one of the newer Disney movies, Inside Out 2, they do an excellent job explaining this because of what we hear from our friends, from our coach, from our parents, from wherever. And ultimately, what we start to tell ourselves repeatedly, that becomes our belief. So just like we experience with the grade, even if it's not fully true, because we've heard it often enough and it makes sense to us, in other words, we've given it a spot in our brain, then yes, it becomes a belief that drives us forward to the rest of our lives, unless we do something about it.
And can it go in the opposite direction too? Can we tell our kids, you're great too often, and they grow up thinking, oh, everything I do is perfect? It's like the thing, with everybody gets a trophy in baseball, which is not the way life works. Is there a danger in over complimenting them or overinflating who they are?
That's a great point. Yeah, I read some of the books, from the experts on how you raise kids, and they say this exact point, and it comes down to how you talk to your kids, the words that you use. For example, let's just use the grades, for example, right? If you're talking about A's, you want to compliment your kids. You want them to feel good, and you want them to know that you're proud of them. So you could say, man, you're so smart. This is great. I'm so proud of you because you're so smart. Okay, well, that inflates their ego a little bit, saying you're smart. But then what happens 10 years down the road when they don't get a good grade? Then they think, well, I must not be smart. But they say, instead of doing that, you say, I'm so proud of the work that you put into this. There's a difference there because effort is controllable and it's not defined by a result. I'm proud of the work that you put into this, and you happened to get an A. That's awesome. But maybe if you got an A- or a B+, I know the work that you put into it, and I'm still proud of you because of the effort you put into it. And I just got chills when I said that, because that is so.
So did I.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I can't say I feel perfectly validated on that one, because I may have over complimented my kids, but I'm so proud of the hard work you do. Because look, I'm naturally smart, but I never worked very hard in school. I have a high IQ. I was a member of Mensa, but I never got great grades, and I certainly wasn't validated by that. But my kids did work hard. Thank goodness. I'm a divorced dad, and thank goodness that my ex-wife was the one that was living with them when in their formative years, and she made them work hard, because I would have let them go. So Yeah, I feel somewhat validated, but a little bit worried on that one. And by the way, John Hill, who's watching us live, says Ben should talk to some of the sales managers that I know. They certainly need what Ben is saying, and I agree that's true. Ben, you have something called the Eden model. Now, we all know that sales could be a roller coaster. One day you're making $1 million, and the next day you're not. And many sales professionals, as I think you were talking about just now, we tie our identity to our results. If I'm making a lot of sales, I'm great. If I'm not making a lot of sales, I'm scum. So can you explain, why is this so dangerous? What is the Eden model? And how does that help people separate their self-worth from the outcomes?
Yeah, great question. So I'm going to attempt to share this on screen. Otherwise, I'll make sure that you get a digital copy, okay? Because sometimes it just doesn't come across the camera super well.
If you have a PowerPoint, you want to share your screen, I think you can, if you can do that quickly.
You know, I should have done that. So I didn't.
No, don't worry about it. you can hold it up. It's all
I'll do my best holding it up. And then I'll give you an example of somebody that I worked with. So let's see, doing my best over here. Yeah, it's going to blur a little bit, but I'll just explain it.
It's good. I just can't see the top one. I see behaviors.
The top one says results.
I got it.
The bottom is identity. So you go from results, behavior, emotions, thoughts, beliefs, and identity. Okay. This is literally how everybody works, but because we're not often talked about it, we don't realize what's happening. So this is the correct model, and I don't have the incorrect model in front of me, but I can share all this stuff later. Okay. I give presentations on this all the time. So here's what happens. We are trained to chase results. And if you get the result, if you're making the $1 million, if you're reaching your quota, we feel great about our behavior. And there's our emotions. We feel great about what's happening. We're talking to ourselves positively. We believe this is possible. And of course, we think, man, this is great. I'm the greatest salesperson ever, right? That's how it works if it is working. Okay, there's key. If it's not working, and understand these definitions, I choose these words on purpose, okay? Not working is in quotation marks, right? Sorry, there's my face again. But so nothing else changes except the result, okay? You went from $1 million down to $750,000, okay? All of a sudden, the result isn't what you thought it would be. Your behaviors, although you've been doing exactly the same thing that worked last year, now you think, well, these behaviors, I must be doing the wrong thing. I need to go find the newest, what's the word? Fad out there, right? I need to read a new book. I need to have some expert tell me what to do. Okay. If those work, again, you start to feel excited. But if your behaviors are not working, the same things that you've tried the last 7.5 years, your emotions are going to be what? Discouraged, sad, frustrated. And our thoughts are going to be, oh, well, I thought I was good at this. Why isn't this working anymore? I must not be great. And our beliefs say, well, this is just too hard. Politics this, economy this, people are stupid, you know? Those are the beliefs that we start to come to the forefront. And then ultimately it comes down to our identity. I guess I'm not good enough anymore. I guess I must not be a good salesperson, okay? So that's a quick illustration of how the model works, and everybody experiences it. We just might experience it the wrong way too often, okay? So that's the cool part about what I get to teach, is we just get to flip it. And when you flip it the right way, you start to get not only the results that you want, but this is what my book says right here, the model for lasting results and fulfillment, okay? Because we can get results. Anybody can chase results. Good for you. You got them. But then you're unhappy, you're discouraged, you're burned out. Was it worth it, right? And did it last? Okay, so there's the difference. But let me give you a quick example. One guy I was working with was about in his 50s. He'd been in real estate for the last 27 years. He was a broker. He did mortgages. He did the full thing in the world of real estate. He was very successful. For those 26 years, he never had to market. He never had to chase people, because they always came to him because he was that good. Now, in the last 2 to 3 years, when the economy definitely had a downturn, especially in the real estate world, things weren't as easy. He started to have to chase people. And he's like, this is weird. What's going on? And then where he used to make, I forget his exact numbers, but easily 250 plus, he was now struggling to make 150, 125. So for him, that's half. That's scary as a business owner. Half my profits, are you kidding me? Half my revenue, right? So even though, and this was very interesting, behind him, just like you, Jeff, you have a lot of cool things behind you. Behind him, he had accolades, he had awards, he had certificates saying best this, most successful this. but that was behind him. And as he was talking to me, none of that existed to him. He said, I'm a failure because I must not be good at this real estate thing. Maybe I need to reinvent myself and choose a different career. I mean, that's the way he would talk. And I'm like, wait a minute, what are you talking about? Right? From my third party perspective. And he was saying, yeah, I'm reading the news, which isn't always the great idea if you want to not be discouraged. But he's sharing, I'm looking at these stats and they say hundreds of thousands of realtors are going to drop out of the market here soon. 50% of this, that, and the other. And I'm like, okay, well, you're staying there. So that says something. And then the fact that you're making over $100,000 in sales still, and other people are dropping out, that says something. And then one last example, his friend who works for a very large bank, so in other words, not self-employed, but he has things funneled to him through a bank, was closing fewer deals than he was. Okay, so sometimes it helps to have a little bit of comparison just to give you the right perspective. And that's what we were doing with him. But ultimately, let's go back to his self-perception. Still being quote unquote successful. Now his definition was different, right? But he was still making decent money, especially in comparison to the market. He was still top of the market, but he didn't feel that way. See these words that I'm choosing? Didn't see himself that way, didn't feel that way. He wasn't talking to himself that way. And ultimately his belief was, maybe real estate is not in my cards anymore. So I'm hoping that some people listening are resonating and thinking, oh gosh, I've had those thoughts, I've had those feelings. Oh no, right?
I think we all have.
Yeah. And yeah, it's common to get to the point and say, well, I got to shift, maybe even shift industries here, maybe professions. But back to this guy. I worked with him for about just over a year, even though things quickly shifted and he had tons of things going on. I mean, with family, with health, with all sorts of things. But with his sense of self, which is the core of what I get to, okay? Because we can talk about behaviors all day long. Everybody does that. We can even mention emotions and inner thoughts, and that's important. But if you don't change how you see yourself, it will not be lasting change. 1 month down the road, you have to go find the next guru. But if you have identity change, in other words, how you see yourself change, it will last. So with him, he started to realize and accept the fact that yes, he was doing well, especially in comparison. And what often happens is we redefine our success. His success used to be, it has to be $250,000 or else. Nothing else matters. Which in his instance, his family, unfortunately, didn't matter as much. His children, unfortunately, didn't matter as much. That wasn't on purpose. But his focus was the 250, right? And then his health didn't matter as much and so forth. So he had no balance. But as we started to talk, and I'm just going to share one more example too, because I feel like it might resonate with somebody. Part of his definition of success was, hey, I have $1 million plus home. I live in a very affluent neighborhood. That's important to me. And another important thing to me is that I have to have nearly weekly Amazon deliveries come to my house with new and fancy things. That was part of his definition of success. But after we started to shift things and say, well, 250,000, although that would be nice, you're at 125, 150 right now. Is that still okay? Are you surviving? Is your wife still happy with you? Yeah, we actually have a pretty good relationship. Are your kids still happy with you? Yeah. Is your health still good? Yeah. And I actually now have time to take care of those things. Oh, that's important. And then as we started to talk about his overall P&L, he started to focus a little bit more on his expenses. And he's like, oh gosh, I do spend thousands of dollars each week on Amazon just to float my ego. And because he started to change the way he saw himself and started to think, well, I no longer need that for my definition of success, he decided to stop all those purchases. And that changed, because we changed the definition, it wasn't, oh, I can't keep up with the Joneses anymore. It was, wow, I'm saving thousands of dollars on stuff I didn't even need. And it elevated his success. So let me close out this story by saying he strengthened his relationship with his wife because, yeah, business was a little slower. But instead of focusing on what he couldn't control and just stress and stress and stress and say, how am I going to get this business back to 250,000? He realized that there could be a blessing in this instance. And he found, hey, I'm still doing good enough, right? Because sure, there has to be a little, there has to be a line that says, is this going to support me or not? So we established that, but then with his quote unquote extra time, he spent it with his wife going on walks. So some mental health, some exercise, some relationship. So he elevated that area. He spent time with his kids. And I could go on and on. His health improved. I mean, he stopped doing some medicine. I don't tell people to do that, but it was an effect of what we were doing. So his entire life became better and more balanced because he saw things the right way.
Mm.
If he hadn't, he would have stayed stuck, reading the news, being depressed, being anxious, probably going to the doctor more, and still not meeting his goals.
Yeah, it's so funny how the mind works. As you were telling that story and saying, he's telling you, oh, thousands of real estate agents are going to lose their jobs. My first thought was, wow, what a great opportunity. Because if
Exactly.
everybody's getting out of the market, I'm going to have a bigger share of it.
Right.
And look, I completely understand why if thousands of people are going to get out of the market, the thing is, oh no, should I really be in it? But
Right.
you tend to see what you look for. Isn't that correct? I mean, if you're
Absolutely.
I often say to audience, if you're looking for the bad, you're going to find it. If you're looking for the good, you can find that too. But it's where are you looking? It takes a conscious effort. No.
It does. And what you're saying is, well, what I'm hearing when you say that, we get what we're looking for, is back to this idea of our title and who we are. Okay. Because as we go through our journey, I'll give my example real quick. With my journey as an HR professional, I went to college and decided that's what I'm going to pursue. And I wanted to be focused. And I'm saying, I'm going to be an HR professional, right? And you might have used some words like I'm going to study HR, but ultimately I'm going to be HR. I'm going to do HR, right? So I climbed that ladder of success, doing the bachelor's and master's and becoming an executive and thinking, this is my identity as an HR professional. Great. And that feels good. But then when my boss, the CEO, comes to me one day and says, Ben, we have nothing against you. We just hate HR. Okay. So I had built years and years of confidence in this sense of identity as HR. And when he says he hates HR, then I take it to mean, well, he hates me. So then everything I had to do had to prove my value to this man and to this company. That wasn't healthy. Okay. It's no fun way to live either.
Right.
Hence part of my story where I turned to things that I didn't need. But this applies to so many people because we place our sense of worth on our job title or our profession or our successes. I'm a sales professional. I sell this. I'm in this industry. I make this much money. That's your identity. And if you're looking for that and you're finding it, then you have a sense of success. This is working. Yeah, my wife's proud of me. My husband's proud of me. This is great, whatever. As soon as that changes or has the potential to change, back to the industry, oh man, everybody's getting out of here. Should I? Then our brain says, well, who are you without that? And that's why it becomes so terrifying to even consider it. Mm. And then we're stuck in this, well, this isn't working here and there's no way I could go here. So what am I supposed to do? And then again, we're stuck because now we don't know how to move forward in either direction.
Yeah. Salespeople in particular tend to be hung up on money. And look, I'd be lying if I said money wasn't important. It certainly is. I mean, you need a certain amount to survive and more to thrive. And in sales, that's one of the things I love about sales, that you have a fantastic opportunity to earn unlimited income. Right. But my experience personally, after quite a few decades on this earth, is that money does not make you happy. And I know lots of people with way more money than way more money than I have, who are miserable. I'm one of the happiest people I know with less, but I say that's a choice, and it really has nothing to do with, look, you need enough to survive and pay your rent or mortgage and all that stuff, but money doesn't make you happy. It's a choice to me. And a part of it, I think, is that we've all got a little voice inside our head that's constantly talking to us. And I often tell audiences, if your mind just said, what little voice is Jeff talking about? That's the little voice I'm talking about. It's always talking to us. And often it's negative, what we tend to call negative self-talk, telling us we're worthless, we're stupid, we're not good enough. You mentioned that before. And when sales are down, which happens to all of us, I mean, I've been in sales 50 years. I can't say it's been a smooth ride to the top all the way. But when sales are down, negative self-talk can be a constant companion for many sales professionals. So how can we begin to change our self-talk when things aren't going right, when we're feeling stuck, when we're feeling defeated? How can we turn that around?
Yeah, great question. So let me give two examples here. First of all, I'm going to share this too. So don't let me forget your question, but I wanted to share this because this is important context for exactly what you're talking about. Because everything comes down to our personal definition of success. And then ultimately it comes down to how we feel about it. Okay. Because we have a personal definition of success. And if it's working, see, I use this often because this is my personal inner voice. It's not working. It's not working. It's not working. And I hate that. And it makes me discouraged or afraid. Okay. And I imagine a lot of salespeople have that too. Is it working? Am I going to get this goal? Right. So that's my negative voice. And I'll tell you in a sec how I've learned to shut it down. But let me go back to the Eden model super quick. So results, $250,000, $1 million, doesn't really matter. It's different for everybody. We have a result and we have behaviors that we think lead to it. But here's the truth of the matter. Everything we do is based on an emotional need. Every single thing we do is based on an emotional need. What that means is if I think working 15 hours today in the rain doing door-to-door sales is going to get me closer to the $250,000, $1 million, I'm going to do it. Because I want that sense of security. I want that excitement of getting the $1 million. This is so important to me that I'm going to do whatever it takes. That's an emotional need. Or if my emotional need is, well, I like the goal, but I don't want to be uncomfortable. I mean, $1 million is great, but it's not worth walking in the rain 15 hours and everything else. You're not going to do it. That's one extreme example, but it illustrates how everything we do is based on an emotional need. It's going to make you feel good. You're going to do it. If you think it's not going to make you feel good, you're going to avoid it. Just making sense?
Yeah, Tony Robbins says the same thing. Everything we do, we're either chasing pleasure or avoiding pain or both.
You got it. You got it. Okay. So now back to the inner talk, right?
Yeah.
You'll hear some statistics, and I'm sure you're familiar with them, actually. Now let's see if I remember them. Over 80% of your daily thoughts are negative. Studies have shown it. Over 80% of our thoughts are negative. What? That's insane, right? And here's the other scary statistic. Over 95% of your thoughts are the same day after day.
That makes sense.
Yeah, which is why we get stuck. This is why we get in a rut. This is why habits stick so long because, well, we don't change much. So if we understand that, if the percentage is super high, then we don't, let's go with the atomic habits, right? James Clear, if anybody's familiar with that. He says, start small. If we can make 1% changes, that all of a sudden, well, it makes a difference, but then over time, it makes a huge difference. 1% a day after an entire year is 37 times better, right?
Yep.
So if we can start with reprogramming, again, this is a Tony Robbins kind of thing, reprogramming because of your training. If we can realize what we're saying to ourselves and practice it during the positive times, practice the positive during the positive times, then we're programming ourselves to know what to do during the negative times. Too often, we don't understand our emotions, so we just hope that we're excited. That's why we chase $1 million, because we think, well, that's definitely going to make me excited. Why wouldn't it? Right? But then, as you mentioned, sometimes we get to the $1 million and we're like, oh, is that it? This isn't what I thought it was.
Now what?
Yeah.
I've climbed Mount Everest. Now what?
Yes. And then our high achiever mindset immediately says, okay, $1 million, what's next? And you're never happy, right? So it's chasing what? And that's why people like Tony Robbins are so good at what they do. And why I wrote my book this way, because we go to the core of why you're looking at the $1 million. That's just a number that means something to you. But if you can understand the emotion that you're truly going for, you can achieve the emotion even if the number looks a little different.
It's so funny. It's not funny you say this, but I've often wondered if I suddenly had $10 million. Here's what I'm trying to say. I don't understand why people who have lots and lots of money, who've achieved, they make $5, $10 million. Oh, now I got to make more. I got to tell you something. If I do all right, knock on wood, I'm not suffering. But if I had $5 or $10 million, I'd be done working tomorrow. I'd do something else to keep busy, but I don't need to work anymore. I don't. Maybe it's just me, but my ego is not tied up in how much money I have or the car I drive. I like driving a nice car and I like having money so I can afford stuff, but I live in a modest house. I drive a decent car, and maybe it's just as I've gotten older, it's not less important to me. I think maybe when I was younger, it was more important, but I just don't care. Truthfully, I want everybody to love me, but I don't care much what people think of the car I drive or that. I don't even care what. struggling as I'm saying. I don't really care that much about how people think about me. I'd love everybody to love me and think I'm terrific, but it doesn't affect my life. And as I've gotten older, what's important to me has changed.
Mm-hmm.
Today, what's important to me is peace of mind. I just want to be peaceful. I want to enjoy my life. I want to do what I want to do when I want to do it, which is why I don't have employees in my company. It's just me. I can do whatever I want. I live a block from the beach. The beach is one block this way, Ben. And for those who are listening on a podcast, I just pointed to my left. It's a block away. I want to spend as much time on the beach as possible. And to me, that's happiness. If I can finish work at 1 o'clock in the afternoon and go hang out on the beach, I'm a happy camper. I don't need more. Would I love to have 20 or $30 million so I could, do what, take a private jet to, I don't know, Monaco. I'm making it up, but yeah, that would be cool. But it certainly wouldn't make me any happier. And
Right.
I'm not willing to do the work that it would take to maybe get there. And even if I did, I'm pretty convinced that nothing would change. Because here's something you'll probably find familiar and funny. I worked for Encyclopedia Britannica for many years, and for many years I was managing salespeople for them. And I had a sales guy who came to me one time and said, "Jeff, I'm moving out of New York. I'm moving down to Florida. I can't take it here anymore. Everything sucks. Business sucks. The women suck. I'm moving to Florida." And my advice was, do whatever you got to do to be happy. But I want to tell you something. When you move to Florida, you're going to be there with you, and nothing's going to change.
Right.
And I'm not kidding you. A year later, I'm driving in the Midtown Tunnel, which goes from Manhattan to Queens. I'm driving late at night, and it's 2 lanes. And I look over, and who's driving the taxi next to me? It's that same guy. And he called me the next day because he saw me, and he goes, "You were right. I was down in Florida. The women still stuck. The business was so because wherever you go, you're there, right?"
Exactly. Yeah.
Crazy. Let's get to something else. Emotions are important. Most people will agree that you buy with emotion and back it up with logic. And as a salesperson, emotions can be intense, especially during a downturn, during a tough period, whether it's the economy or you're having a personal one. It causes anxiety, it causes frustration, even sometimes shame. And I think we can see why from the things you were saying. What are some of the practical strategies that you recommend for managing these emotions without letting them control you? Because I find that quite often people are run by their emotions. Instead of them controlling their emotions are controlling them. So what can we do?
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so I'm going to share 2 things, and I'm going to go back to what you said real quick. In your example, hey, $5 to $10 million, that's cool, but how would it affect me? It's because of your definition of success, and it has changed over the years, and that's great. It happens to all of us. But I want to focus on the emotion.
Hang on. I'm sorry. I got to make a point. In my mind, having $5 or $10 million would not make me successful. That's not it would just make my life easier.
There you go.
See, when I say I don't think money makes you happy, it's harder to be happy when you don't have money because you're struggling to pay the bills and do that stuff. It just makes it easier. But to me, that's not, you can certainly use money as a measure of success, but $5 to $10 million, that's not what makes me successful. If I had $5 or $10 million and could do whatever I wanted to do whenever I want to do it, that's what having the money to do what I want to do when I want to do it. To me, that's success.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yes. And the emotion that you said is peace of mind. Remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So for you, this is the emotion that drives all your behavior. And I'm just using you as an example because everybody listening is going to think of their own emotion, right? But peace of mind drives all of your behavior. That drives the fact that whether or not you're going to have employees, whether or not you're going to work crazy hours, whether or not you're going to sell to certain things, to certain people. That drives everything.
Whether or not I'm going to date.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm telling that drives that big time.
There you go. So that's exactly right. Now, for other people in different, let's say, phases of their career, their emotional desire or their desired state is different. If it's peace of mind, okay, what gives peace of mind? Or do I have to feel good enough? Do I have to have the certain flashiness, right? Do I have to drive a certain car because that means something to me? This, Jeff, what I'm talking about, is the key to understanding everything we're talking about. Some people, if they don't understand this depth, this is why if somebody says, okay, what's the secret to success, secret to happiness? More money. Okay, cool, chase more money. Some people say that. Or they say, well, what do I have to do to be happier? Well, do these certain things. This is literally why I designed this model, because so many people say, well, here's the answer. You have to have the results to be happy, or here's what you have to do to be happy. And that's as far as people go. Literally as far as people go. So people try it, but because it's so on the tip it doesn't last. And then they get more frustrated because it's affecting the identity. So back to the emotions. I'll tell you two things. I'll tell you what to do in the moment and then what to do before the moment, because these are crucial. So I'm going to start with before the moment. If you can establish the emotion that you want and create a pattern that links to it, and then do this during your morning routine, this is important because it starts a foundation, right? So an example that possibly many people have heard is the idea of making your bed. Super simple thing you do first in the morning, but you make your bed, it looks good, and you give yourself a sense of success. I started out.
You've done something first thing in the morning.
Yes. So I accomplished. That's important, especially for males or high achievers. It looks good. That's important. And I can feel a sense of success. So it addresses meaning, it addresses emotions, it addresses task lists and everything else. Because you started your day that way with positivity that you controlled, that reminds you during the day when somebody slams the door on your face, hangs the phone up, swears at you, says, heck no, get out of my life. You can remember, no, I control the positive of my day, not somebody else's reaction.
Right.
So that's why the before is super important, so that we know it works. Otherwise, in the moment, it's so, let's say, challenging. When the emotions are strong of fear and anxiety and failure and shame, it's like, man, I tried my best and I did say something stupid and I offended that person. And now they're going to be upset and they might sue me. Not only did I not make the sale, but they might not sue me. So sure, the stakes are high and our emotions are going to be very, very sensitive. We may want to give up and hide under your covers of your made bed. You may want to do that. But the key to any successful person is how you get up in those moments, right? We're all going to have them. The successful people don't find a way to never have those anymore. They find a way to get up and move in spite of those things. So if you start your day with an example like that, then you establish something you can do even in these strong and emotional situations. And I'll just give you one principle. Okay, everybody's different, but you can adopt this principle. You may have noticed 2 minutes ago where I hit my chest.
Yep.
This is a physical thing because it wakes our body up. It takes us out of our mind, which is the fear thoughts, and the inner voice saying, you bozo, why did you say that? You're going to be a failure. You're never going to succeed ever again in your life. You may as well give up. Why? Because it's protecting you. It doesn't want you to feel hurt. It says it's easier and you'll have more peace of mind if you just give up, if you stop trying. It's easier that way, right? Is what it says. But of course, we can't believe that because it will never take us to our true happiness. And so if you use some sort of physical kind of thing, right, whatever it is, I just gave a bunch of examples, it takes you out of your head and back into your body. And then you can start to have a different phrase. Instead of whatever the inner voice is telling you, or whatever that customer just told you, or whatever you just read on the news, you can have a phrase that is powerful to you, that is programmed with these positive emotions. So I'm looking at I have some sticky notes right in front of me on my screens. So I'm just choosing one of them because I have a bunch of them. All right. There's a lot of negative voices out there. So I got to have my tools.
I have positive signs all over my place. Absolutely.
Yes, because it's crucial. So what you do is you learn to use this phrase and program it with this physical action. So I'm going to use two. Mine was, this isn't working. Is this working? When is this ever going to work? Those are my negatives. And it's as simple as flipping it to the positive. This is working. This is working. And then we can have all sorts of, explanations behind it. But let me just keep it super simple. This is working. And I am adding value. That's important to me, that I'm adding value. Because in the world of professional speaking, you can speak on a stage and you, one, might have no idea what people are thinking. Or two, the people who do fill out the surveys, they might not be very nice. So it can hurt. And you can think that last 60 minutes was an absolute failure because of what they said. But for me, these two things are super important to me. It is working and you are adding value. Even if they didn't like something that I said, I still added value. I still blessed their life because of the things that I shared and that I was teaching and everything else. I still bring value. That's important to me. So if I can link it to something physical, even in a hard moment like that where people are just tearing me down and it's really waking up that inner voice, I told you so, right? then I can say, no, it is working. I add value. And let's just use the door-to-door example, right? I even asked one of my friends who was very successful in door-to-door sales. I'm like, dude, how do you do it? Because I was very discouraged at the time. And he says, well, if I get somebody to slam the door on me or I get somebody to yell at me, I immediately go to the next house. There's no question, no other option. I go immediately to the next house. I just start again. I don't give myself time to wallow or to understand or to try to justify what just happened, right? No, move on. So those two things, start something in the morning that gives you a concrete, I control my positive emotions, and then have something that you've practiced. You realize I've done this multiple times, right? Something that you've practiced so that when you do it, you've programmed it so much that your body all of a sudden says, oh yeah, we're going this way. And I don't need to debate it.
Yep. You're anchoring. I love it. And you see me nodding because I'm agreeing with everything you're saying. While I don't make my bed because I live alone and my dog doesn't care if the bed is made when we get in it at night together, I do have a morning routine. First, I always forget the name of it. There's an actual name. Shoot. Now I'll have to look it up later because every time I forget this, there's a name for the time between when you're sleeping and when you're awake. As you first realize you're about to wake up, there's a name for that. And I can't remember what it is, but as soon as I realize I'm about to open my eyes, I automatically put a big smile on my face. And I know I look like an idiot when I do it, except, that releases serotonin and endorphins and stuff like that. So it's a great way. And he's laying behind me, so I'm going to have to spell this. Otherwise he would jump up right now. The next thing I do is go out and WALK, the DOG. And again, he would have jumped up very quickly right now, and it's not quite time. But as I'm doing that, walk WALKing through the neighborhood with my DOG, I have a big smile on my face, and I'm saying things out loud to myself. And it's the same thing every single day. Takes about 10 minutes, but today's going to be a great day.
Yes.
Only incredibly wonderful things are going to happen to myself and my family today. I'm going to make a big difference in people's lives today. And everybody I interact with is going to be thrilled that they were touched by me. And it goes on for like 10 minutes with various stuff. But my belief is that when you start talking like that to yourself, your mind's listening to everything you're saying to it, everything. And it tends to believe it. I'm a loser. I'm too fat. I'm whatever. Okay. You get more of that. But when you start, I have very few bad days. I'm not saying I'm perfect. And certainly I have the same emotional roller coaster that everybody else does, but I have way more great days than bad days. And I believe that it's at least in strong part to setting up my day every day, as opposed to people who tend to wake up. And I think this is most humans. Crap. I can't believe I got to go to work again today. Mm-hmm. It's a different mindset. I say you're in control. So you either accept that you're in control and you do something about it, or you're at the result of whatever emotions come your way. Yes.
Yes, exactly. And then back to sales, right? I mean, who's gonna make more sales or have more an enjoyable day of those two options? Well, the one that's having the more positive talk, right?
I think so. There's something I wanted specifically to ask you because I saw it in one of your posts. One of the things you suggest is I think it was on your website, that we're all doing the best that we can. And my coach says the exact same thing. Everybody's doing the best they can. It often seems to me, and I think to many people, that other people, not me, of course, other people are not doing the best they can. Is everybody truly doing the best they can? And why is it that what we feel that we're doing the best that we can, but others aren't?
That is a complicated question.
Yeah. Well, you've got 16 minutes left.
Yeah. So let's see what direction we want to take this, right?
So is everybody doing the best they can? I mean, is that truly your belief?
I would say no. Okay. And let me explain why, right? First of all, everything comes down to an emotional need. So according to our brain, we are doing the best we can to meet that emotional need. Yes. That's why people turn to the extreme of addictions, because they're meeting an emotional need with that addiction, or they're doing everything in the most productive outcome way to meet that emotional need. So in that way, sure, we're doing the best we can because we don't know any better. Okay. Now, when it comes to goals, let's say, the goals are okay. Goals are important. I'm not saying you can't have the $1 million goal because it's going to destroy who you are. Everything is going to not work out. No, goals are important. The key that I teach is that you cannot forget your identity as you search for that goal. Otherwise, you will suffer on your journey. And if and when you get there, you may not like who you are or how you got there. Okay, that's the key that I teach. So then, doing the best we can. This is where your identity conflict comes in, because now I'm doing a lot of quoting of people, which is great because, hey, they're professionals and what they say is work, so why not, right?
Absolutely.
But the strongest force in the human psyche is the need to remain consistent with the way you see yourself. Tony Robbins has said that. The strongest force in the human psyche is the need to remain consistent with the way you see yourself. So all of us have a core identity that has been established by all these thoughts and all these emotions and all these beliefs and the way we've talked to ourselves for years and years and years. And of course, they're influenced by values and how we're raised and religion and all this stuff. Okay. Essentially, it's how we see ourselves. That's ultimately what it is. Now, if how we see ourselves does not match the results that we're getting, then there's going to be a disconnect. There's some dissonance in the world of music, right? And if the result that we're striving for also doesn't resonate with who we are or who we think we can be, there's going to be some dissonance. And this is why if somebody gives us a quota and we say, well, I guess that's the path to success, let me do it, and we're never happy along the way, it's because it hasn't aligned with who we are or who we want to be. Right. Okay. This is crucial to understand, to even hear the answer to your question of, is everybody doing the best they can? Because if we have a strong goal, and if we've done some work to align ourselves with it, then yes, there's a variety of the effort that we put into it. Can we put in less effort on one day? Yeah. Can we put in more effort on another day? Then could you still ask, well, are we doing the best we can? See, this is one of those chicken or the egg conversations, right? Because in the world of sales, business, life, maybe your 100% today is actually 50%. If you can give 50%, that's all you could do, great. You can still be happy with yourself. I'm proud of the effort that you put in today. Back to our kid conversation, right?
Yep.
So, because it's a chicken and egg kind of thing, I'm gonna leave it there. Do you have any follow-up questions?
No, I think you did a good job with that one. It also brings to mind, and I can't remember whether it was Tony Robbins or James Arthur Ray who talked about an internal thermostat, and it's really based on what you just said. So often, I'll find, I've worked with salespeople for 50 years. They'll get to a certain level, and then they'll stop doing the things that got them there, because if you think you're a $250,000 earner and you get to 300,000, you're going to sabotage yourself because your internal thermostat says, oh, no, that's not it. For whatever reason, psychological reason that happened to you when you were a kid,
right?
Or whatever lessons you were taught, like money doesn't grow on trees or money's the root of all evil or stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So it really does break down to, how do we see ourselves? What is our self-vision? That's brilliant. Tell us about your book, how we see ourselves.
So yeah, it came about, and I'll just show the title here, or the cover here.
Yep.
It came about after I coached people for about 5 years. And everybody that I coached, whether they were looking for more money, to be more successful in business, to grow their business, to even to lose weight, even to overcome addiction, I mean, whatever they were coming with, it always came down to how they saw themselves. And they even used language like the old me and the new me. I was like, there's something here. Then I was taught in business, especially in the world of coaching, find a common problem, find a common solution, and make a product out of it. So I'm like, great. Well, I see something very common, very powerful, very sustainable and scalable. That's why I turned it into a book, How We See Ourselves. So it goes through and explains in great detail the Eden model, all sections of it, and it brings you into the story. Where are you in relation to results and behavior and emotions, thoughts, beliefs, and identity? So you can, diagnose is the wrong word, but you can put yourself in there and say, where am I and what do I need to change? And most importantly, how can I change the way I see myself so that I can get the results that I want? But here's what's cool. When you change the way you see yourself, the world you see changes.
I'm with you.
Yeah. So anyway, what else do you want to know about the book? I could tell you all day, but
actually, I'd like to hear a little bit about your other book too. You have another book called 7 Steps to Reach Your Ultimate Potential. I don't know that everybody is looking to reach their ultimate potential, or I think everybody says they are, but I'm not sure everybody's committed to it. But what are some of those 7 steps to reach your ultimate potential, especially maybe ones that might, not be as common as some of what we hear?
Yeah, sure. I'm going to share two of them.
Perfect.
And I'm choosing because some of them we've already spoken about. But I'll read a couple of them real quick. So number one is define your ideal. We have to have clarity on where we're going. Otherwise, we're floating on the water, hoping to go somewhere. It just
Yep.
doesn't work. And you can use any GPS example. I mean, GPSs don't work if you don't tell them where you want to go. Hey, Siri,
Exactly.
let's go. Where would you like to go? I don't know. Let's just go. Well, good luck. Right? So defining. Oh, wow. My Siri just heard me. That's funny.
Ben, I do stand-up comedy on the side, and I have a bit where I say, "Hey Siri," and sometimes if I forget to turn off my phone, it's like, "Oh crap! Can't believe." Shut
That's
up,
awesome.
Siri. But I've been there, done that, my friend.
That's great. So defining the ideal, and Napoleon Hill of Think and Grow Rich, he talks about this. A lot of the thought experts from the past talk about defining your ideal, and it has to be so clear that it excites you and just makes you think, yes, I'm going to get up this morning because this is my vision, my passion. When you can have that power, it activates your subconscious so that it works even if you're not feeling it at the moment. So that's key. But then here's the next thing that I think, yeah, I'm going to focus on this because a lot of people don't fully realize the power of this. If you can define your ideal, and how I say is, okay, describe your life in 12 months. What does it look like? Who are you? Crucial question. How do you feel? Crucial question. Because sometimes we just stick with the SMART goal. Yeah, I want to make $1 million and I can get it by December 31st, blah, blah, blah. Okay, sure. But if it has no emotion and it doesn't meet your true definition of success, which is how you truly want to feel, then it's not going to be aligned. Anyway, we don't have enough time to go into there. So being very specific on what you want is crucial. But then here's step number 2. Live your dreams. What that means is, even though it's a goal 12 months out, you don't have to live as, well, I sure hope I get my goal, or when I get my goal, or when my future comes.
Yes.
No. You live it today. When you feel the excitement of having your goal, losing the weight, making the money, having the relationship, whatever it is, if you can live that way today as if you've already achieved it, your subconscious believes you. So it's going to lead you into all the things that are going to bring you to it. But most importantly, you don't have to wait to live in that emotion. So this applies to all salespeople listening to this call. Whether you're at your top of your game, loving life, or whether you're thinking, I'm just listening to this podcast because I got to make my decision whether I'm going to stay in sales or not. Okay? If you can define your ideal, which may be redefining your definition of success, it's okay. But then decide to live that today, you will go where you need to go and experience fulfillment along the way, which is worth more than any goal money goal you can have.
I can't tell you how much I love that, Ben. I do a 1-hour motivational talk. Besides being a sales coach and trainer, I do motivational speaking, and I talk about that as being the if only. Most people live in, if only I had a better wife, if only I drove a better car, if only I was skinnier, if only I had more money. When? Why are you waiting to be happy? My experience is that your happiness is not tied up in any of that. It seems like it is, but to me, it really all boils down to a choice. And I've
Yeah.
done a lot of work on this over the last 50 years to get to this point, but it really is a choice. I choose to be happy. I choose to be sad. I choose to be rich. I choose everything. And my personal thing, and this is just how it works for me, I'm unwilling to have my life be that I walk out at noon to cross the street to go to the deli and get a sandwich, get hit by a car, and have my final waking thought on this earth be going, crap, I wasted the last morning on earth being pissed off because somebody cut me off while I was driving, which does piss me off, by the way, but I've learned to let it go quickly. I wasn't always this way, but I can now go, you son of all right, go ahead. But
Right.
I think it's a choice, and it's how quickly can we recover when things do go wrong. I think
Right.
that's part of the deal. We're quickly running out of time here. I wanted to ask you about this because I know I saw in your profile that you are a father of 5, but you're also a musician. I'd love to know, what do you play, or if there are more than one thing, and have any lessons from music transferred over to helping high performers be their best?
Yeah. I've been thinking about this quite a bit lately, actually. So I play the flute, the piano, the organ, and I sing. So I've done a lot of stages. I've done a lot of trainings, or lessons and recitals and concerts all over the world and all that good stuff. And yeah, I was thinking about it. in many, many ways, because you hear stories. There's a book that talks about how countries that develop the greatest talent, whether it's soccer or violinists and what they do. There's a lot of mindset involved in high performing, but let's just talk about speaking, right? So I'm a professional speaker, and that's an element of performance. I mean, you're getting on stage, whether it's memorized or you're just trying to interact with the audience, you still cues and timing and wording and emotional arcs and all that kind of stuff. It's very important. The same with music. It's so interesting because there are 88 keys on a piano, and the difference between a basic piano player and a concert pianist or somebody who has, a billion listens on YouTube is the order and the timing and the frequency, or anyway, how they organize the notes. It's literally it. Everybody has access to the same notes, but it's so different because we have to hone the craft. And I'm going to speak specifically to high performers since you asked. As high performers, we have a history of performing highly, obviously, but that also comes with being self-critical. To somebody else, we could think they played that piano flawlessly. They did absolutely amazing. They're on stage. Everybody pretty much worships them. You just got a standing ovation. That high performer could get off stage and completely beat themselves up because they missed 2 or 3 notes that they had practiced for 17 and a half hours 2 days ago.
Which nobody else caught.
Yes, nobody else caught, and 0 people, right? But they beat themselves up over it. Same thing applies to us high performers, whether it's in sales or in speaking. I have to catch myself because it can be so destructive. I love the high of being on stage. I love the high of helping people, the high of somebody coming up to me and saying, I needed that. You've changed my life. That is incredible. And again, I'm getting chills just saying that. But the inner voice can come back and say, Ben, but you messed up. You should have done better. Remember that person, that one person out of 75 that gave you that negative comment? Yeah, let's focus on that one. And that's destructive. But same with music. It's like, no. It was one note. People loved it. I did my best. I'm proud of the effort that I put in. This is working. I added value. That helps me move forward and continue to add value because people need it. Everything that we're doing as salespeople, as high performers, we're blessing. We're making an impact. We're helping. And if we can remember that by taking care of ourselves and seeing ourselves as worthy and as in a solid place and having the proper definition of success for ourselves, not based on what somebody else gave us, that will make all the difference in our happiness and success.
I don't know if this is helpful to you at all, but feel free to steal it if you like it. I will often at the end of a speech or especially a training, because they almost always put out a survey. Now, I've been here to help you for the last 8 hours, and I still want to help you. I know you're going to be taking a survey, so let me help you. Just mark off excellent, excellent, excellent. It's all going to go well. That usually gets a laugh, and I still do read them. And every now and then there is a negative comment. And of course, we don't focus on the 74. Wow, that was the greatest thing. It was life changing. We focus on the one that says, yeah, but I didn't like your big nose or whatever. I didn't like the comment you made about this.
Exactly.
Damn. I was hoping we could get to one more question, but we're actually out of time. Before we go, let me magically bring up your contact information. Ben, I'm sharing my screen now. Would you please tell people how they can reach you if they're interested in working with you or have questions for you? And remember, this will be, there are people watching live, but this will be converted to a podcast. So if you make it clear for them, that'd be great.
Sure, yes. I most enjoy connecting with people straight on LinkedIn. So you just find me on Ben Eden or search for Ben Eden Speaks on LinkedIn. And then there's my website, reachyourultimatepotential.com. That's where you can learn more about my book, How We See Ourselves. You'll find my email, ben@reachyourultimatepotential.com. I think it was John at the beginning of this said, hey, I need you to talk to my salespeople. Let's connect. Happy to share this conversation with people because, yes, people need to get out of their own heads by talking to somebody else and help them reframe what's going on, and it'll make all the difference.
100%. Well, Ben, we are out of time, and I thank you so much for sharing your brilliance so generously. I think this is a message that's always important, but even more so right now because I do see a lot of chaos going on around. And I'll end as I always do. Please remember that, gang, that sales is a game of making things happen. So get out there and make sales happen. Have a great weekend, everybody. Have a great weekend, Ben. Thanks again.